We have a great session this morning. We recently had a pilot project going, people moving from the old LMS Vista to Connect, and that was from January to April. And we have a wonderful selection of pilot adopters here with us this morning. We've got 6 presenters, and they're going to share with us their experience moving from Vista to Connect. So the good, the bad, the ebbs, the flows, and just their experience, their journey moving from Vista to Connect. What hopefully this morning will look like. Actually, I'll start with the presenters first of all. So we have Michelle Lamberson on the very end. She's our fearless leader at the Center for Teaching, Learning and Technology. We have Jody from the Masters of Education Coordinator, Early Childhood Education and Research. We have Darlene. Sorry, I'm not going in order. Sorry, Duncan. Let's start with Duncan down here. Multimedia Developer, Land and Food Systems. So we have Lucy Gofton. And we have Warren Code, Mathematics Department, and Darlene, Senior Instructor and Coordinator of the Educational Support, Physical Therapy, Faculty of Medicine. So how this hopefully will look this morning is we've asked them to prepare just a really quick 15-minute tour. And if they can address some of these, obviously you can repeat your name, your faculty, and the Connect course that you were involved in during the pilot project. Your first impressions with your migrated course, so how long did it take you to get comfortable in the new system? Did you get some training? What sort of support did you have during the pilot project? Your students' reactions to using or learning in Connect, rather. And what words of wisdom, if any, and I'm sure there's tons of words of wisdom you'd like to pass on to your colleagues that are heading into using the new system, Connect, in the fall. So if you have 15 minutes to fill, that's great. If it's 10, that's wonderful. Anything that you impart to your colleagues, I'm sure will be invaluable. We'll try and throw a 10-minute break into there. And what I'd like to do is, if the participants could do their 15-minute tour or 10-minute tour, whatever it is, and if you do have questions for the individual presenter, if you could just jot that down. We've supplied little booklets on the table and some pens. And if you could hold those questions to the end, we will hopefully have 15 to 20 minutes of a Q&A time for you all. How does that sound? Good? Okay. Any questions from the presenters at all? We're all good? We're all ready? Darlene would like to start. She volunteered, so. Joe's gonna switch over.
Okay, can people see? Okay, so I just wanted to say that my course is audiology. It's a prerequisite course for a professional program, and the students in the course range everywhere from those who probably don't have the background they really need for this because they're sort of self-selecting out of science to those who are attempting to apply for the professional program, and therefore grades, right? You can appreciate what's going on with the competition there. They come from all over the place. We have them this term, Canada, Asia, Australia, Middle East, all over. When we did the pilot, we had 4 sections, about 20 in each section. And as I said, a real range. These are primarily traveling English-speaking students as opposed to being from those countries, and we've had from all over. So we have an issue about putting people together in terms of time groups and time zones and so on. So it's a fully online course. There's 6 modules. There's quizzes in all of the modules, and then there's 4 weeks of group projects where they have to work together online. I put that together into the 4 weeks. They have an online midterm, and then they have a face-to-face invigilated final. And this course has gone from about 10 years that I taught it face-to-face to WebCT, so we've done some transitioning to Vista, to Blackboard, and now I think it is actually yet more new things in Collaborate. So the first impressions of, I think that was one of the questions, so what was my first impression of, it was just confusing. I had the 80 students, and about half of them have no experience anyway with online learning. So what's their impression? They're just afraid of online learning. So that's where we started, and I communicate with them ahead of time. We started our training in the second week of December for the January start, so I hadn't actually seen the process, and then you know what December is, and so about the 16th, I think it was the 15th, we saw it first online, and then the 16th way we went. So, and I had a baptism of fire, but I got a tremendous amount of help. Comfortable. I teach neuro, I teach how the brain works, and the word comfortable, I think, is something I'm just seeing my therapist about getting used to as opposed to expecting to have. It's never going to be comfortable, I think, as long as we keep having all these nice new innovations. So it's a matter of level. But what's comfortable for us and for students, and I'm going to use this to talk about this, is that what it essentially means is that you have learned enough that the thing becomes somewhat automatic to you so that you can use your head for the other thing you need to do. And so when things become comfortable, it's that you are familiar enough that not everything needs to be thought about all at the same time. And you'll see what I mean a little bit as I go on about that. And the students' impression, as I said, I didn't get a lot about that. Students are more concerned about when the line goes down or they can't get into the course or all those kinds of things. And I just have to tell you, one of the things I heard, and I thought that's nice, was they got into Blackboard Collaborate, and they said, hey, this is a neat tool. And I thought, okay, I like that. So survival tips, I thought I'd give you maybe 3 tips I was thinking of. And one is to be at one with your IT people. I wouldn't have survived if it hadn't been for all the help I got. And I just thought it was just tremendous. And Josephina, Jason, Benita, without them, I would not be here. I would be like the bears. Second tip is what do you think your students worry about most in online learning? They worry that it won't work when they need it. They know it's up to them to learn. They realize that, but they want to make sure that what they learned, they get credit for. And you often don't know if it's going to work either, because often you can't tell until you've got the group in the course that you really find out how things are working, and during a test is a really bad time to find out. So my first tip is set up no-risk practice for everything that they need to be comfortable with. So practice quizzes, and explain to them it's not about the content, it's about the method. You want to get used to the process, do it over and over and over until you can stop thinking about how it works. Okay, and the ones that don't do that, you find out. Practice assignment submission, if they have to put something in a little box somewhere and make it work, and then they have 2 files to load up, and they find out that after you put the first file in and you hit submit, the second one won't go in. Things like that. So find it out, let them go through that, listen to all the noise, and then settle them down, and then the real thing happens. And the same with the midterm. So I found that was really, really useful to do that. The third one, don't trust old friends. Now, I don't mean my old friends at CTLT, but I mean what you are used to in the previous. Don't assume that they're the same, that things are the same just because they look the same, because when you get there and find that they've improved it, that improvement might be something you actually have to wrestle with. So they don't look the same. They do look the same, but they aren't underneath. So I would suggest that you start with 1 or 2 of the most important tools. And again, get comfortable with them. Use them over and over. Find out what they can do, and select what you need it to do, and avoid the distractions. Because you're going to find that things don't, you need to get that solved first. And the example is the grade book. The grade book is not the same thing as the grade center. So I think of the grade book as an Excel sheet. Is that what most people think of it as, an Excel sheet? Yeah, well, it's not. And so it doesn't do the adding and subtracting, and I'm very used to doing all those lovely adding and subtracting things, and it just doesn't do that. So we all know what this is, an Excel sheet, and we know what this looks like. All you have to do is you just do equals, where are we here? So you do an equals, and this is sum of, and then you do that one plus that one, and you get your number, and that's how you do your Excel sheet, right? And that's how you do the grade book, but you can't with the new grade book. It has a different way of doing the counting up of columns and things. So before you need it right now, that's a good thing to check those things out and find out and take I would recommend the course on doing it. Okay, so those are the things that I thought were really important to me. And I thought, if you like, I will show you a cool tool that I have used. And so we can escape here. And now I have actually chosen to do this on the pilot, on a shell that's empty, so that because I wanted to show you something and there's no students on this shell.
Do you need me to be going into Connect or into LMS?
It's actually the pilot, so it's still the Blackboard one. You can chat while I take a moment to find this. And
Talk amongst yourselves.
so this is a tool that I heard about and wanted to use when I got to the Blackboard, and was very pleased to find that I could use it, although in a slightly different way. But the idea here is that you can go to your gradebook, and you can, from the gradebook, go through each one of the quizzes, assignments, or whatever, and you can send an audio email to your students. And I found that once you get past the time it takes to learn the process, it is very fast. It's much faster than typing out comments to the students and so on. And so I'm just going to try and I hope this will work out as it's supposed to. But I just have to remember I go to the grade center first. Okay, so there is and this is the student, and I'm just going to find a quiz along here somewhere that's been, I tried to do a new quiz yesterday and it won't let me, of course, because the time is up. There we go. And so you can go here in the gradebook and, sorry. This should work. It's not for some reason working.
It's not a quiz.
I'm going to go to internal messages. You can go to internal messages and haven't done this for a little bit, so you open the message in a new tab, and sorry, having trouble with it.
Just do create a new message.
Just go straight for that, but okay, it won't take it over. Okay, so you have to send the message to someone. In this case, I'm going to choose this and that so that I can make sure you hear it. And then just send a copy so we can hear it. Okay. And then I go down here to the message. It does like to have some kind of title, and go down here to when authoring. And when it opens, again, things are a little tight there. And then you will see that you have this little record button, and I just have to go over here and make sure that it is getting the headphone. And this is your feedback for whoever that person is, and then I can go back here to the grade center and I can look at for reasons which I'm not sure, it's not giving me that quiz. So I will ask you to imagine that I now am looking at the quiz. I can get that open.
Some kind of warning in the top left with the orange tab of Firefox, is that right?
I'm sorry?
No warning? No pop-up blocker or anything like that?
It shouldn't be. In any case, what you would see here is the quiz that you are then wanting to comment on. So it's quite, I could go across here looking for another number. Here we go. There's one. I think what happened is I actually wrote that number in. So there's my quiz coming up now. Okay, so I can look at the quiz and I can go back and forth to other quizzes and proceed along. I would begin here by then commenting, and now you can see that it's running, and that what I'm saying here right now is being recorded for the student. And then after I've said to them, hello and how are you, and I see you've done very well, and this is what we're going to suggest that you might want to work on for the next test, and then I will pause it. I can start and stop a number of times, and then I can finish. I then submit it, and I then submit it over here as well at the there. And now in the inbox, we can play it. And I don't know how well you'll be able to hear it. Okay, so the person that's hearing it's me at this point.
How's it sound?
Good.
I could hear it.
Could you hear it?
Yeah, I could hear it.
Evidence right here. So it will normally work on their computer without special equipment, so they don't need to have anything. And then I find that I can go through a whole set of quizzes and also some of their practice assignments and so on. And that will allow them to get that, and they like that personalness. They feel like there's a person there. So anyway, I find that's a cool tool. Thanks.
So you could set this, we're supposed to wait.
If you could, yes. Right.
Sorry.
Maybe draw time to questions. That's great. Okay. Thank you, Darlene. Just an FYI, when you get to the 1 minute mark, Zach's actually going to hold up. What are you holding up? I just
What's
saw
red?
it.
I'm doing 5 minutes and 0 minutes.
Oh, 5 and 0 minutes. Okay.
So the red was 0.
The red was 0. Yeah. Who would like to go next? Lots of blank stares going on. Okay, Duncan, great. Thanks for.
It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah. You're going into pilot,
Elements.
right? Okay. There you go.
Yeah, so my name is Duncan McHugh. I work in the Faculty of Land and Food Systems. I feel a bit bashful, especially going after that great presentation, because I had a pretty small course. There were 6 students this year, so it was a very different situation for us. So the course that I taught with Dr. Andrew Reisman and Cyprian Lomas is LFS 400, which is the very wordy title, Digital Communication and Topics in Agriculture. What the course actually is an audio storytelling course for agriculture students. So in fourth year, it's a small group course where we teach students storytelling skills, focusing on audio, because it's just kind of a good way of getting through a project over a term. So it's a small class with lots of workshopping. We've had it in this configuration for 4 years. In the past, we've had up to 10 students, but this past year we had 6. So it's not really pushing Blackboard or Connect now to the max. But we decided to use this as a pilot, in part because it's small, and in part because, in addition to being an instructor of this course, I also work in the Learning Center, which is the instructional support IT department for the faculty. So they felt that I would be a good guinea pig in that respect. Previously, for this course, we had used Sakai for a couple of years. We had a co-instructor, Catherine Gratzinger, from the School of Journalism, and the School of Journalism had used Sakai for a number of years, and we really liked it. It was very clean and straightforward to use, and so we had that for a couple of years, and then it wasn't supported anymore, so we moved over to Vista. And the advantage to Vista is that students were very familiar with it, so it was an okay transition. Although we didn't, I found Vista pretty frustrating on the whole. I found it pretty clunky. So when we were offered a chance to move over to Blackboard, I was excited to try something new. And in general, my impressions were that it was a lot cleaner than Vista. It seemed to be more intuitive and make sense. It also seemed like a program that had been designed in this decade. So it was built for a modern browser, and it worked quite well. So our use of Blackboard was, like I said, pretty limited. We weren't doing quizzes or group work. Mostly it was for grades, assignments, announcements, and to put up some web links. I also didn't make it very cool looking. I saw your the way that you had set it up with an image and things like that, and I didn't do that. I took 3 days of training as a part of my kind of instructional support work. So I had a background in Blackboard, although a lot of the stuff that happened in that 3 day of training was a bit higher level. When it came to actually getting into the course and designing it, I still had to kind of work my way through it, but I was able to figure it out. I think for the most part, I have a facility with websites, but in the past, Vista, a lot of the jargon in Vista I found pretty difficult to get through. And there's a bit of jargon that you have to learn here, but I didn't find it quite as obtuse as Vista. So I was able to get in and figure things out. Yeah. All right. So, like I said, it is a cleaner look. It's kind of easier to navigate. If you click things, things don't disappear the way that they do sometimes with Vista, and there aren't as many pop-ups or warnings or things like that. It's just kind of it all happens in the window, which is nice. If I switch edit mode on, you can see a lot more of the. So this is all the kind of background stuff. So I tailored this for our students with the tools that we were using. So. My grades, announcement, and mail were up there. Then we used the syllabus and assignments and web links. So all those things were moved to the top, and then I hid assessments, calendar, chat, all those other tools there. Yeah. So announcements were the one thing that I wanted to use that I found pretty tricky with Connect. And that's going to clear up, I think, as soon as students start using it more. But because this was a pilot, students just didn't see the announcements that I was putting up because they weren't visiting this site very often. I originally, when I had been trained up, I thought that there was a way of tying that to students' email. So it worked more like the Faculty Service Center, where if you send out a message, it goes directly to their email. But I couldn't figure out how to configure this to do that. So we just use the Faculty Service Center for announcements throughout this term. But like I said, I think once students have adopted this more widely, that announcement issue won't be a problem. Grading was very straightforward. I don't know how much of this I can show given that it's being filmed, but there's a grade center down here, and it shows you what needs grading. So when you have an assignment set up, the assignments come in, you get a big list of the assignments that haven't been graded yet, and you can go through. And once you've set up the assignments with the points that each assignment has, then it automatically shows up in the gradebook, and it'll give you a total. So I found it pretty.
I asked them afterwards to
if there are student names or whatever, that we can't actually show that. So
Yeah.
in other words, we'll work to scrub that.
Okay, well, I don't need to go into the grades, but it was pretty straightforward. When I set up assignments, I set up the value of the assignment, and then that went into a column in the gradebook. And then as we graded them, they sort of added up on the fly. So by the end, there was one of the columns had the totals, and then we put those right into the Faculty Service Center. So I found grading to be pretty straightforward. That being said, there were 6 students. So if you have hundreds of students and you're hoping to take the grades out, put it into Excel, share it amongst multiple TAs, that kind of thing, it's going to be a very different thing. But for this 6-person course, it was very straightforward to use the grade center here. So that was my experience. Yeah, in terms of students, the course kind of freaks out students already because they're having to learn how to use audio editing equipment. They're having to, instead of writing a paper, they're doing a 10-minute audio story. So there's a lot for them to grasp already, and this was the least of their worries, is the sense I got. So we gave them a brief intro at the beginning of the course. We explained why we were doing this and putting them through this. It was doing it to fourth-year students was maybe a bit cruel because they were all leaving the institution, so they were going to learn how to do this and not have to revisit it. But it worked fine. The only hiccup was the announcements, and then also some poorly designed assignments on our part. So I didn't quite set the due dates properly, and so the assignments would disappear, but that was easy to fix, and that was all on me. That had nothing to do with the students. So I'd say just in, so going forward in lessons, there's a lot of training that's being offered through the CTLT, and I'm sure through your faculties as well. So I'd recommend taking the training, learning. I know I've seen a sheet that explains what the terms are in Vista and what the terms are in Blackboard, and that was very helpful because just having that dictionary of jargon was a great bridge into using Blackboard, so that those little terms that can be confusing were cleared up. And then for students, I really don't think, our students are not especially adept at doing stuff on the web, but they were competent enough, and there were no real hiccups. They were able to figure it out pretty quickly. So I wouldn't be too worried about your students, and if you're worried about it, I know that there's lots of resources at hand here at the CTLT, and I'm sure within your faculties to help bring you up to speed. So that's it for me.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. And just as a plug, Duncan's facilitating a telling stories with audio session. I think that's on the 21st of June here at the CTLT Institute. So, at our offices here. Who would like to go next? Okay, great.
Everybody's going to.
Can you give me? Yeah, you bet. I'm just gonna actually just go. I think we might. Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so the course that I taught, I'm Jody Strelaski, and I'm in the Faculty of Education. The course was Early Learning Curriculum in the Preschool Years. It's a senior undergraduate level class. There were 12 modules that went with this class. There were some embedded videos that we used. There was about 16 students in the class. I would like to do something really, exciting with you and say, oh, it was so challenging, but it wasn't. It was so seamless. There was no issues with myself logging on, with the students seeing announcements, but then I thought maybe I'm not being innovative enough because I'm not using audio storytelling. I'm not, Darlene, with the headphones and giving them really cool audio emails. So it was pretty basic. The students were from Portugal and China and the Netherlands, and it was no issue logging in for any of them. And you think there might be with some international logins, but there wasn't. And the assignments were quite basic. They had to do an observation of a child, and they created PowerPoints and slideshows that they shared with one another. There was a final paper. So there was really no issues. The only concern that they had in the beginning, because as we all know, students, when something is new, they can get a bit excited, was the notion of notification of an email. On the Vista site, of course, there was that little green asterisk, and they knew that an email was waiting for them, or an announcement. So that was the biggest issue that they had. But after a week or two, they just knew to check more regularly. This course was developed. I developed this course as a PhD student 3 years ago, and so now I've been on faculty for, I guess, 2, and I've done it 2 years as a faculty. And so many of the students that took this course with me had followed me on Vista as well. They had taken online classes with me. So it was a really kind of a safe learning environment. And there were some new students, but it was just, it was not an issue. And I2 support was wonderful. I worked with Ian, and he was excellent. So I'm sorry I don't have really, I think it'll be fine. I think it's wonderful. It was a non-issue. So, and just some of the modules, we used lots of photographs, lots of videos, things like that. So, yeah.
Was your course migrated over?
It was, yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah. So honestly, I think I need to be a bit more innovative myself. But as far as the transition over for students, for myself, were there any challenges? No. I mean, perhaps. I mean, and when I mentioned that to Ian, that it would be great if there was a notification. He said we're working on it. So I don't know what that means. Hopefully that's going to come, and that's going to come to fruition. So yeah, it's wonderful. It'll be no problem.
That's great. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Working our way through. Great. Okay. Thanks, Lucy. Let me just. And yours is on Bible. Yeah.
So if I do go into something versus student, yeah, we'll fuzzy it. Okay. Thank you. So hello, I'm Lucy, and I thought I might go after Jody because I'm in the same faculty and we were trained a little bit together. I taught the career counseling course, the NPS 363, so it's an upper level counseling course. Some people who are taking it are interested in getting into the counseling program, I believe, and I'm a doctoral student in the counseling program within the Faculty of Education. I think Jody was the experienced head, taught online before. I think I might have been chosen to pilot because I had never taught an online course before, so I didn't know Vista, and I wasn't really familiar, apart from being a student, with using an online system. So I did have a bit of a learning curve with it. The course involved some learning modules, and it had a small group discussion as well as a larger group discussion, so we were using a lot of the discussion functions on it, and that was really great. I separated them. There were about 30 students, and they were separated into groups of 4 that they did a lot of in-depth discussion for each module on. And they actually had an assignment where they did leading a discussion for a week within their group. So that was done all sort of week by week, but within these smaller groups. The training for me was very, very important. They had set it up for me, so I just sort of had to come in there and learn how I was going to use it. They had already put all the information into the learning modules for me, but it was more about how do I then put people into the smaller discussion groups? How do I send out announcements? They put the announcements up on the front page for us, so that was great. That solved that problem, I guess, about students seeing them. It was one of the first things they saw when they logged on. As well, they put the calendar up there, so I was able to put in all the dates for when things would be due, and that popped up on the first page for them as well. Yeah, the training was a couple of hours, and Ian again was a great resource within our department, who I was able to contact with questions throughout. There were a few problems I found with submitting my feedback, so this might just be a learning experience. How do I go down?
If you use 2 fingers,
Yeah.
just use 2 fingers to swipe.
So yeah, I guess clearly I was the right person to pilot for someone who had no idea what they were doing. So for assignments, and then 2 fingers. There we go. Under the grade center, when things would come up as needing grading, just to give you a sense of. So there were 2 sections, an instructor notes and a grade current attempt. And they do give you smaller things that there's a notice that this is the feedback to the user, and that's sort of for your own personal information. But for some of the first ones I did, I thought instructor notes meant that would go with the students. So I would submit the grade up top, and then I put quite a bit of feedback in that didn't actually go to the students at all. So these instructor notes are just definitely for your own information. So that might have been something that was similar to Vista and previous courses, but that was an initial problem for me. I wonder if there might be something around that when they submit assignments as well, because some of the students would say they had submitted assignments to me and I didn't receive them, and so that was another glitch that we had, having to follow up. Student concerns, yes, again, notification. They wish there was notification when they had messages. A lot of them had used Vista before. They were a bit resistant to the change. They didn't know why things were moving over. They said they had some difficulty navigating between pages and also with printing. But because I had the external programs and learning technology was giving support throughout, they would address their concerns and help them get back on track as far as how they would do that. So by the end of the course, we were all doing pretty well with it. There weren't any major concerns coming up. Things were going smoothly. The only tips I would say is to remind students to check their messages regularly because of not having notification, that they have a message from you. Knowing your support people. Being careful where you put your feedback if you are using this function to send it back. And also being aware that when you send them a message replying to something they've sent you, you can't send an attachment with that. So that was frustrating. I don't know if that's also part of Vista as well. And that was it.
Okay, great, thank you. Warren?
Sure.
You're up.
Is there really no scroll bar, or is it just the part of Windows missing? On the right there. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So my name is Warren Code. I'm a science teaching and learning fellow with the Carl Wyman Science Education Initiative. That's the Faculty of Science Initiative, and I'm based in the math department. So I do some instructional support, and that's kind of required, or I felt like it was important for me to get used to the LMS. So I did learn a little bit about Vista. I'd helped people with Vista a little bit. Our maybe major application of Vista in our department, which is not one that tends to use it, is for students to register iClicker devices. So this is something you can do through there, but that's about, for most people in the math department, that's all we've used it for. So I wanted to be a little bit ahead of things as well. I was teaching just this past January, so I thought I would try out the pilot as well. So I had some experience with Vista, but not a course to migrate or anything like that. I
maybe I'll say a bit about, so the training, I went to some of the earlier sessions in, I guess it was November, December, that Darlene was also at, which was, I think, very helpful. So my main recommendation is just start early. So whatever it is you're planning to do, if you have a course that you're migrating or if you're new to it, just make sure that you start early so that you don't, because you can probably figure out a way to do the things you want, but you want to know what they are. You don't want to get caught behind during the term. So my course, I have a nice wordy course title as well, Math 184, can I point there? Differential Calculus for Social Science and Commerce. So this is a first year calculus course. These students are taking it in term 2, and in this case it's almost entirely solder students on a standard timetable. So the section is about 120 students. So I had one of the bigger ones maybe here. And that meant that these students were very familiar with Vista. They had Vista for basically all of their courses in first year, and I was getting them in second term. So they had sort of built up knowledge. So I tried to, in some places, I tried to kind of mimic Vista a little. So I called it the grade book, for example, because I think My Grades is the default now or something like that. So, I tried to do a couple of things so it would be a little simpler for them. I also, I kept from, others have said, so I didn't really use the announcements scheme. There were a couple things that I was worried about just because it was a pilot, not because I think the system has the nice functionality, but I couldn't necessarily depend on students having registered their email additionally with the system, so I didn't do any announcements there. I used the FSC. And same for announcements about assignments. I stuck with a static web page, but I did sort of link to it here. Oh, I want that off so we can see it. Right, so I have a static web page that I pulled into here using embed. So actually a lot of students, and I haven't looked at the data, I may even have some data on this, maybe this is what they thought, where they thought the course website lived, maybe they never looked at the sort of regular one. But so this is just a static page on the math server that they would look at. So this is where I actually put announcements and posted links and all those sorts of things. So most of my stuff all lived on that server. So that's something you can do, depending what you have set up already. And again, this was something so I didn't have to worry about whether students had access to Blackboard or not, because that was something I wanted, I wanted them right away to be able to see everything. So I didn't want to have to worry about that. Right, so what else did I want to say? Yeah, so I had, I guess, a mixture of issues. I had some decisions that were made based on the fact that it was a pilot, so I guess those were the main ones I've already said. I had other things that I discovered along the way as in terms of, I wanted to do something and it maybe wasn't available. Again, I was kind of new to this. I knew some of the jargon, as Duncan said, so certainly some of the language. I knew some of the Vista language, but I needed to get used to Blackboard language. And so you'll have to do the same, so you need to know things like, so there's evaluation, what does that tell me about, and what does Grade Center tell me about, even though those sound kind of similar, that kind of thing. So those were to watch out for. However, I did have, so I'd say I had good support, so I was working mainly with Andrea Ham from Faculty of Science, and Bonita Bray was also mentioned. Yeah, she was also great. So, being able to email, I mostly did my support by email, that was great. So they really helped me through various things, and I mainly went to training early on as opposed to some of the stuff available during the term, but they also had drop-in sessions that I wasn't able to make. Right, so maybe a little bit more about what I did. So I wanted to use the LMS, not necessarily so, as you've seen, to present course information, so I didn't build learning modules. I wanted it as a vehicle for online submission of homework, basically. So I assigned, because I had reading assignments where students were given something specific to read, and then they had to, there was a little quiz associated with each of those, and so they had to fill that out. And that way I could see before class, how many people have actually done it, and what were their major concerns, and that sort of thing. So it was sort of a just-in-time teaching mechanism. So I had that, and test review scheme where they could, they looked at their tests that were given during the course, and then they had to review them and send me some summary of their thoughts on the test, so what they had done wrong and what they were going to do to fix that. So these are things where the online system's really great because you set it up, they can do it. It doesn't have to be exchanged with the TA or anything. I can just browse what they've read, and so that went pretty well. There were some things I like to see in terms of the assessment builder that were better than Vista. I think I made everything a test technically, so there's still this test assessment or test assignment language. But for example, the test review, I wanted them to answer some questions and also upload something, which I think was two separate things in Vista. And that's something now you can just have those both in the same assessment item, which you would probably want. So that was nice. I had.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So in Vista, you have, I believe it's 3 classes. So you have tests, surveys, and assignments. And surveys. So there's still this issue. I think you still have surveys where it's like you can't really attach them to people. Not the way I wanted, so they're still anonymous, which I didn't want. Tests are, you have a multiple choice quiz, or you want them to answer pretty much anything you want to get from them through some kind of web form that they fill out. And then assignments was just, here's a spot where you can upload a file and write a little note about it, and that's it. So I wanted that to be kind of put together because it seems like that. And then you could just have maybe a few files if there's different things you need them to upload. So those can all be just incorporated into one assessment now. So that was nice to see. In terms of the gradebook, I like the gradebook better as well. It was mentioned already that it's dynamic. I guess I'll show mine now. Oh, sorry. Right. So the student's gradebook doesn't show you anything. You have to go to your own grade center, I guess would be what it's called. For the instructor. So this is the part that will get blurred out. So you have, so it's dynamic in the sense that, and maybe I'll go down to someone who's not really a student. Right, so you can change, you can adjust, so I can assign a grade here. Did that work? Yeah. So it's dynamic in that sense. So whereas Vista, you'd look at just a static page by page of grades. Here you have this interactive scrollable window, and then you can change things on the fly, column by column. So you have this sort of column thing. So I liked it. I did use some of the facility in terms of adding up, so you can do weighted addition of columns. And it was the first time for me to make this kind of information public to students during the term. So of course, they can't see everyone's, but they see their own. They can see all their grades. So I hadn't actually done that before. I just had my own spreadsheet. But this actually, it forced me to be more on top of it, which was good. And then it also turned out to be not a bad vehicle for that. I mean, I can't imagine doing this manually with an old style website. So I like that. I guess that's I mean, Vista offered that, but this dynamic thing is nice because you can just change one little grade or something as you go without having to mess around. Now I did end up having to use, so there's this work offline. This is where you can import, export files for, so I was working mainly in Excel, so a spreadsheet. And that worked pretty well. I did end up having to use that for some of the grading. I discovered, for example, so there's a documented feature where you can grade all of your assignments at once by question. So it's like, oh, here's question 3. I want to just see if everybody did it and then give them their points. And I was doing a lot of kind of open response things, so it won't grade it automatically. And that turned out not be available. It just sort of wasn't in there, which was strange. So there's an example of start early to make sure you can do something. So I ended up having to go back and forth with the spreadsheet, but actually I found that relatively painless as well. So I don't know what people are used to with Vista, but I thought that went fairly well. What else did I want to say? Right. Evaluation versus grade center, I said that. You can do the weighted columns. Overall, I was happier with it than I've seen with Vista. start early to make sure you can do the things you want, and happy to chat about it later. Thanks.
Did you
Yeah.
want to mention WebWork?
Well, I can mention WebWork. So we have that's an online homework system. So it's external to the LMS, but there is this is a server hosted by CTLT and supported in the technical sense by CTLT. And what happens when I do it? This is actually just a link to it. So it will be integrated eventually. So that wasn't quite ready for the pilot. It will be integrated eventually that you'll run WebWork and it'll sort of chain the login. So students will be able to go through seamlessly to their online homework. Here I was just providing them with a link to it. Yeah, but that's on its way because that was done for Vista and that's on its way for Blackboard. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Last but not least, Michelle. Are you going to Connect or LMS?
LMS.
Okay.
So math online system. So you can so there's way more than you can do.
Ah.
Yeah, it's Sphinx math.
Hi there. I'm Michelle Lamberson. I am the managing director here at CTLT, but I also teach one online course a year, and that's Earth and Ocean Sciences 311, the Earth and its Resources. It's a fully online distance course for non-majors. There's this year, I think we had about 28 students or 29 students in the course. And that fluctuates. I think I had 35 last year, so different numbers. Some of the things that you may have been noticing as people have gone through about this is that the layout when you first log in is very different. You've got more information up front. You've got a variety of different tabs up here that can be used. One of them that I found really interesting, but it was off to the side, was something called Notifications Dashboard, which is where you can have what we call Connect notification module pages. And these are dynamically updated. So there's information in here that you can deliver to the students that's new, et cetera. So there was I know that my students had some of the same challenges at the beginning. They're used to getting a notification with a new discussion or a new message, but you can actually use this notifications dashboard to do that. So you'll notice that the discussion board has 11 messages, for instance, and announcements, there's 21. I should have looked at my own announcements. That's what I should have done. So, but going back in, if you go into the course itself has, it's a full course. It has 6 modules in it. And so when I first wanted to start using this, I tend to use everything. I tend to want to try everything when I'm doing things. So my course itself has, like I said, there's 6 modules. There's a quiz at the end of each module. Students do a range of assignments. There's 2 journal assignments. There's also a term project that has 3 different deadlines. So all of that has to be articulated and for the students to understand that. As well, there's, I think, a total of 4 discussions during the course. So there's a variety of things that students have to get used to when they first come in. And what I would do, the way that I layered the course in Vista is there's a home page that kind of spelled out everything that was in the course. You clicked on content and went in, and there was a page or a group, a sort of subgrouping of each of the content modules. And so I started out by wanting to do exactly the same thing and altered it a bit when I first came in here. So the home page of the course has the course outline, a course welcome, module 1, module 2, all the way down all 6 modules. And I spent time on trying to figure out how to do that. Because one of the things that I think I had to first get used to was the difference in metaphors in terms of the way content is treated in Blackboard versus, or in Connect versus what we had in Vista. So that was one of the things I needed to get used to. And people talked about training. I shouldn't say this. I didn't take training because I tend to be somebody who has to dig in and do things myself. As any of you, I think some of you here know me that kind of do that. But what I did do was I spent a bit of time with the person who migrated the course, so I could see the difference in what my course used to be like and what it ended up being. So I sat down and went through that with them. I also sat down and did a kind of Vulcan mind meld with Andrea Hahn, because Andrea had used Blackboard at another campus, and I was just trying to understand the differences in what I was used to and what was Vista and what Blackboard could provide. So I started out with this lovely homepage where you go in and discovered, though, because of all the scrolling, I was concerned students wouldn't make it to those pages. So I ended up driving most of my the navigation off of the left nav. So I ended up using that pretty much fully. And the other thing I did was I started out with this as the homepage, and then I decided, because of that dashboard piece, that I would switch, and this was based on student feedback, because they said they'd like to get more announcements, those types of things. And I ended up switching it so that there's a customization here where I can choose a different style, and I can actually select what they see when they first come in. So I ended up switching over and using my dashboard page, which you've seen with a number of them have used a dashboard page instead, so that when the students come in, let's see, that now what they'll see, I'll go back out and in, is the dashboard. So I ended up using this, which students then saw. If there was a new announcement, it would pop up. If there were things, for me, it was also questions on what needed to be graded. So I'd have, down at here, alerts on here about if there's anything past due, all those types of things. That type of material can be delivered to students. So that was a distinct difference where the early warning piece, I could set up a rule that said if somebody hasn't logged in several days, I get a list of that. So I was trying to understand better, because with a fully online course, they need to be in there. It isn't, my course is very structured. Karen Belfer helped me with that. My course was very, very structured in terms of my expectations when students were in there. So I could actually check to see whether or not they had come in. So there were some of those things that I wanted to learn how to use. One of the other things I had to try to get used to was the idea of how the way certain tools worked in Vista versus in the new system. Quizzes, for instance, when you create quizzes, you create them in the quiz tool, but you deploy them on a page. And so where I was used to doing everything at once in Vista in terms of putting a quiz together, and I could set when it was going to be released, all those types of things, what you do in this system is you have a quiz. Where's my quizzes? Down here. I put them all on one page so students could find them. And then you deploy it on a particular page. So in this case, I'd have to go in and edit the options on it to give the students the information and when it was released, all that type of thing. So it's a different metaphor in terms of you create the quiz and then you deploy it. So that was something I had to get used to. The other was in the discussions, just getting used to the discussion board itself. I had questions from students about when they were looking at things and why couldn't they see things, and they just had to get used to the navigation. I was able to talk them through most of that, but it was a little bit different. On the upside for the HTML editor in here is so much better than the one in Vista, it's not even funny. I mean, students were actually posting, from day one, they were posting images inside of the course. And this lifetime list one, what I asked students to do is go through everything you're supposed to do before you die as a geologist, basically, and ask them to relate to that and to talk about some of those. And I was very lucky in that the first person who posted did an unbelievable job. So what she did was, right off the bat, started putting images in. Notice she did put a photo credit and copyright pieces.
Is she real?
Yes, she's real. I know, I was surprised too. So you see some of the photos she took, the Google image, anyway, actually when she first put it up, her last name was different and I had to figure out it actually was her. But went through that and that just set the bar for everybody else. So it was so I actually emailed her and thanked her. I said, thank you for setting the bar. Because as soon as you do that, and then the students that came in and answered, I can't remember if, I don't want to go too far down the pike of showing too much student work, but there was a lot of use of imagery, links to, they use the embed, there's an embed into YouTube, there's a variety of things that they figured out pretty quickly how to use them. And I was really actually impressed by the amount of the multimedia savvy of some of these students. So that was an interesting thing to get used to. What I had some challenges with was group work, because I was used to, what I do is with a couple of the discussions is I break them up, have them each answer a similar set of questions where they're supposed to answer one and then reply on others. And I had to get used to the idea that in this tool, when you create groups and you provide students with a discussion board, it's actually a full discussion board. It's not just a topic in a discussion board. So when you're deploying it, you have to get used to the difference in that full functionality that's provided in the groups tools.
And is that in a different spot?
Yes.
So they have a discussion post that's not on the discussion board, that feel like the group discussion board?
Yeah, there's a group. Each of them, if you notice here, my groups, they have these show up here. But what I ended up doing, because what I like to do is I like to have them put them both up, have each of them answer it, and then after the discussion's done, I want to open it to all of them. And that I found challenging. I had to copy them into the main board. And so then I discovered that in the discussions of this, and I will finish, you don't have to throw something at me.
You'll wonder because I asked a question, Michelle.
Oh, that's true. Thank you. In the discussion, if you go in, I can manage this and actually choose who is going to be involved in discussion. So I could select a bunch of students and have them see it, and then when it's done, let everybody see it. And so I ended up doing that rather than using the group tool the second time around. So you've got, that functionality wasn't there in Vista. I never had that. But we would use selective release to do something very similar. So it's just a matter of, for me, it was a matter of translating from one system to the other. I also found the grade book as really excellent. Grading was pretty straightforward for the most part. So overall, I had a very positive experience. It took me a while to get there. At the beginning, I was railing against it because it wasn't Vista. So if I was to kind of think through and think about some advice, and it echoes a lot of what my colleagues here said. One is give yourself time to adjust. Definitely spend time prior to really understand it. Do take the training. I know I didn't, or utilize the drop-in session depending on your style of learning. I would tend to go more into a drop-in style, and there's plenty of those available. I use the help a lot in that. The last thing that I would suggest is don't turn WebCT Vista into the world's most perfect product. It wasn't. And so you hear that, everything worked perfectly in Vista, and we know that that's perhaps a bit of a stretch. So that's the other thing that I would suggest. So that's it.
Thank you, Michelle. So we'll open up the floor to some questions. I saw everybody excitedly taking notes. So do we have some questions for our presenters? Elaine.
I have a bunch.
Great.
First of all, thank you all, because this was really, it was really good to see your different perspectives and to understand how it really works, not just the demo of how it should work, but how it really works for you. So thank you. My questions are, in Vista, there's student mode, teach mode, and build mode. I see the student mode and I see something called edit mode. Does that combine? Are you able to actually upload new files, adjust files, do what build mode used to do in Vista?
So it's different. So in Vista, it was more like you were one person that had maybe multiple roles that you had access to. Here, you're, I guess, the instructor. It's sort of there isn't really a distinction between build and teach anymore. I think it's just that's it, and you can turn the editing on and off. So you can turn it off if you just want to look around, but what you see is not what the students see. So maybe actually another suggestion would be get a student account. I don't know if this is something that will change, but get a student account so you can actually look at it as a student.
So there is a new student view. It's been, yeah, there is a new student view, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, you guys didn't obviously have that unfortunately in the pilot, so, yeah.
Great. And I'll just ask one more question and then I'll wait until everybody else is done. In Vista, the students could adjust their settings to auto-forward course email to their own private or preferred email account. Can this be done in Vista as well?
I can answer that. There are two things in Blackboard. One is there's a messages tool, which is internal, which is sort of like internal email, but there's no auto forward out of that. So there's an internal messages. But then email is actually linked into email. And so you need to ask your students to put their email addresses in order to receive any kind of notification. So you can have that happen. I tended to like the messages tool, but because I got no notifications, but I know we're working on a building block for that. I did use the email itself. So there's an email that links into their external email, but if a student doesn't put it in, they don't get it. The other interesting thing from a discussions point of view is there's a subscription capability. So a student can subscribe to that, and you can subscribe to know when new discussion posts have been put there. So there's a little bit, it's a different metaphor again. It's keying into an actual email address.
So let's play with it. And my last tiny question is for you. I'm sure that splash page photo was one you took. The panoramic view of Vancouver?
Yeah.
Will you share that? That's the best panorama I've seen ever of the city.
I don't know, there's a lot better ones on Flickr, but certainly. So.
Can I just comment on your first question? Because in our department, we have a lot of multi-instructor courses, and we have variable access that we want people to have. So coordinators of the course, more access, and we don't necessarily want everybody seeing the grade book. And I understand, although I haven't put it in place, that you can actually do some selecting of the roles those people can have.
Okay.
So I haven't looked into it fully, but again, just with talking to the med folks, med IT people, they said that we'll be able to have some selection.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, ready?
So I have two questions. One, how did you select people to be part of the panel?
I actually wasn't here, so Michelle, maybe you can address
I
that.
don't know, I got volunteered.
Okay.
So it ties into my second question.
Yeah.
Clearly you all made it to the end of the course. Did anyone drop out of the pilot?
That I know of.
No?
No, we had, I think it was about 40 courses and 45, either 45 courses and 40 instructors or the opposite. So
people felt like they had enough support going through it. It sounds like that's a theme. I have a colleague at another institution that doesn't feel that way.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we really tried to do was to ensure that there was good, strong support for people and ongoing. You know, it's not like we're woohoo.
Yeah, just them.
Although I have to admit, I did do one obnoxious thing in the middle. I know there was a challenge with Vista in second term where it wasn't working as well. So I emailed the Vista administrator and said, Blackboard's working fine. So that was kind of neat. The other thing we did for all the pilot courses is we put a link inside of Vista so that the student went into that course, they went over, and I looked at the traffic. So they were normally in Vista, and they actually came in often through that link as opposed to directly.
So they were registered in both courses simultaneously?
Yeah, what happens is we put a link that says go over there, so that they would
then
not.
there's nothing in the business
Right.
show. Okay, sure.
So,
I have to go to the Vista one.
Oh, one other thing. Connect, Blackboard. Connect is
It is
separate from
Connect.
Blackboard?
No, Connect is the name that was chosen for this new
Version.
system.
So this is like, instead of version 10, it's Connect.
No, it's UBC's name for this system. What we wanted to do is to get a name. We ran a naming contest, and that one actually came up. I forget how many students and different people suggested that name. And that allows us to focus in and say the system is Connect. And if we ever have to replace it out again, we're not trying to figure that out. So it's going to become our ongoing name.
So Warren just wanted to show that
Yeah.
linking
Can I
between.
make this bigger? It's down here. So that's the Blackboard pilot, BB pilot it says. So that's like a link to the Blackboard site.
I think we had Cindy over here. Yeah. Did any of you prepare any kind of orientation, just sort of basic navigational aids for your students coming in to Blackboard for the first time? Did you have that in the course?
We embedded a few, didn't we? Some of the instructions, because that's a big thing I found for students, is to know how to do things. And a lot of them, because of the amount of work there is in the course, they really don't go surfing around looking. I did find out ahead of time that over half of the students have never done any online learning, like for a fully online course. So we put some things embedded, but we got them doing exercises.
And did you find that they used those?
Yes.
I gave them a walkthrough, so we went through it together, and I explained to them where things were and why we were doing the pilot. And I had a couple of we put a bunch of links in there that they had to listen to, or links to audio that they had to listen to right away. So there was an incentive for them to get in immediately.
We send an email through or I sent one out through the faculty list or the faculty email, just so they had all the links. So there wasn't anything that I took them through specifically, but they understood why the shift kind of was happening, and they had the different links they needed to try and get more familiar before it started.
And for us, there was also a place where they can provide anonymous feedback right in the beginning of how they felt, because there were some issues, and so they set that up, kind of a discussion forum that they could anonymously share how they felt about Blackboard.
Yeah, and we had great support. I think we probably had Ian and Natasha were doing that, so they would go in there and problem solve and give specific ideas on how to address problems within that discussion thread, which was great.
Yeah, and I sent it out as well. And we also had the learning on the course that students could go in prior. Any of the distance education students can go in and test out a course. Not sure how many did that, but I also took some of that content from a pilot course and put it in. So I had some material in there, but I just answered a lot of questions for the most part.
Yes. I would like to hear from the panel, how much time have you spent from the beginning, designing your course, until the administration and until the end of the course? Have you have an idea how much time? In hours?
Just getting familiar with the new system.
From the beginning to become familiar, and then administrating the whole course, giving feedback, doing the quizzes, the response, and putting the news, responding the emails from the students.
I have no idea. And certainly no more time than with Vista. It wasn't. So I don't know if you're accustomed to using Vista. No.
Well, I use but not for courses, no. But no, normally you compare with a regular course where you go in front of the class and you have to design the quizzes and write the quizzes. Do you have an idea what is your load of doing that?
I think it really depends on what you're doing, what the specific usage is for that environment. For my course, it's a fully online course. That is their classroom. Whereas for others, they select, when I was actually teaching on campus and using the online system, I was using it just to post notes and do those kinds of things. I wasn't using the quizzes. The discussion board was there. Students tended to ask questions in class. So it depends on, what is the purpose of that environment and how are you using it? And also thinking about, if I'm going to have them do this, what aren't they going to do?
But if you compare a regular course, like most of the courses are given in your class, no? Your students are in front of you. If you compare compare whether you are doing now is more work or less work, or
I think one of the things that happens is it keeps changing also. And the not only does the platform change, but also you probably learn new tools and add them in a different way than you might in class. I taught my course for about 10 years, and by that time, a lot of things, well, of course they need changing, but they, you have a certain amount of it down, and I found it took much more time. Now that might also be because I liked the kind of communication, and I was willing to spend the time, but I think it takes a lot more time to teach online well. It doesn't have to, but I think it tends to.
I agree, because when you have a discussion forum, I mean, you've got to make that choice as an instructor. Are you going to respond to everyone's posts, or are you not? And so I think if you're really engaged with your students and really want to have that communication happening like a real classroom, I think it is more time-consuming, more work.
And I suppose there is more flexibility because you can go and address your computer in some place. But at the same time, I wonder if, of course, the students are expecting your response immediately, so they'll constantly have to have access.
You set expectations. I mean, at the beginning of the term, I've got a whole thing on that, it says, I'll try to answer during the week within 24 hours. If it's on the weekend, it may wait till Monday. So, and you have to yourself stick to that. Don't answer questions at 3 a.m. You save as draft. For one thing, you probably shouldn't be. 3 a.m.
You still get students who send you 3 emails that are all panicked and the caps are getting more and more and more, and then we're getting 3 minutes of each other, and why aren't you answering? But
And also on the weekends, some of the help that you would like, that they need, if they're having trouble getting in, I mean, I would have just as much trouble as they are, but every browser has its matched up program that there's problems, and students often think that any problem must be the platform and not their own computer and so on. So you get that desperate thing that goes on and people leave it till the last minute or whatever. And they can't, in a classroom you're not there. And online you may be, but on the weekends, for example, sometimes that's when a lot of them work. So I'm often there in order to help.
I still remember when I was in face-to-face class getting a 5 a.m. phone call. That was that was challenging. You've had your hand up.
Yeah, well, this is actually related, and I think that this may be the real kernel. I mean, there's one level of online teaching versus in-person teaching, and how, and that's a big and huge and important discussion. But I think what I'm interested in is how seamless is this migration from, the comparison between doing your course on Vista versus doing your course using Connect and getting there. So those are the two, how seamless is that migration? Does some magical person in a room with a big screen push a button that says migrate and all of a sudden it's perfect? Or does it take 50 hours of you going through and finding bugs and calling Emily and doing all kinds of other things to find all the little inconsistencies that you have to kind of realign?
I'll speak to that a little bit. I think it depends on what your course looks like in Vista to begin with. If it's a very complicated course and it's a fully online course, and you have probably used a lot of the tools in Vista, it's probably a longer, more complicated migration process and a cleanup process, because there is kind of choice A, B, and C, and there's a process for each of those. Perhaps a course maybe like, I'll use Duncan's as the example, it probably didn't use a lot of the tools in Vista. Yeah. And was that a migrated course, or did you start from scratch in?
I started from scratch. I wanted to, because there were so few things, and I had updated some of the resources that I preferred to just do it myself.
Right. So a second scenario is you might have a smaller course in Vista, so the migration process is much easier, the cleanup is easier. And then in terms of Duncan's situation, he started from scratch in the new environment. Yeah. So really nothing came over. He uploaded fresh into the new. Yeah.
It didn't look very cool in Vista, and it didn't look very cool in Connect. But if you had put a lot of work into your Vista thing, I think you'd want to migrate that module over.
Yeah. Michelle, your course was migrated over? Yeah. Because it's a very robust course, so to recreate it would have taken a very long time, and I think the window of opportunity from, you know, being told we were part of the adoption group to actually running the course was very small, no?
Yeah, and I think a part of that was just the technical platform getting ready this fall.
Right.
So we had a limited period of time, but you know, there are challenges, depends on how complex, and the distance courses are usually very different than because they've gone through a design process. There are also people behind the scenes doing things. So, you know, I think part of it is the metaphor, the different metaphors is, I think, the biggest thing you have to get used to in terms of how the content works and how you deploy things. I mean, it's for, I mean, and I've been using WebCT since BC, since before company. And so, you know, moving into a different platform is it's traumatic. But it wasn't as, I don't know. It just took a little while. It just sort of, I had to get my brain on Blackboard, is basically what it meant. And after that, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And it's going to happen regardless of how much.
And just new things. There's so many new cool things.
Also, the IT people were also learning. So in all fairness, they had, you know, they had a year ahead, but they were learning some of the things too. So moving, I think, Jason, we have problems moving the quizzes, for example, and I like to edit while I'm going on through the course, and some of those things are a little bit clunky, and maybe we're learning now that they can be done, but you know, it took a while.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned about the jargon, so you said that there was some sort of list that kind of links Vista and Blackboard jargon. So is that online already somewhere, or okay?
It's on the website, resources.connect.ubc.ca.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when will we have access to this?
What we're doing is across the board at UBC, depends on which faculty you're part of. And so that's which faculty you're
I'm in
part of.
science.
In science, then when do you teach?
Till September.
September, then then I believe all of the science courses are moving, so presumably they'll be getting in contact with you quite soon.
Oh, okay, so soon. And then you mentioned there'll be like drop-in session, training sessions, so when will those be held too?
Drop-ins are?
Yeah, they're all through the summer, so Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It depends on the day. If you go to events.ctlt.ubc.ca,
Okay.
there's a series called Connect Institute. And so all the training that's going to be offered this summer is available to register for on that website. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they're going to be theme-based. So we might cover assessments for 2 hours on Monday, and Wednesday might be uploading content on the next day.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're more theme-based versus the overall course.
Okay.
I'm not sure who put your hand up first. Okay, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to ask, okay, so all of your courses that you talked about today in the panel discussion were fully online courses, is that right?
No.
Oh wait, so there were some that were
Yeah, mine was almost all face-to-face.
Okay, because my question is about how many of all the different options in the system that you use in a face-to-face course versus in the fully online course. Like, what do you think are the most valuable things? And obviously, I guess they all migrated, right?
Yeah. For me, I mean, just because students have audio files, they needed a way of submitting those electronically. So creating assignments and having them submit those assignments online was crucial. So in that respect, Connect worked very well. We decided not to have discussion groups, but that would be another thing that could be supplemented or that could supplement a face-to-face course. And I mean, group work, quizzes, all those things could be used. It's not appropriate to our course, or we don't use it for our course, but it could certainly be used for other face-to-face courses.
Can I just follow up? The other thing was related to quizzes then and migrating like multiple choice questions. No one mentioned that. Was that easy? No problems with that? Or?
We had some trouble with it.
Because Vista was so clunky, you know, how you had to add in all those A, B, C, D answers separately and blah, blah, blah. Is it easier now in this system?
I think it's a little bit easier. I won't speak for everybody though. In terms of migrating all your quizzes and assessments over, that's not a problem. Everything comes over. But again, you have to kind of be diligent about doing some cleanup. So you might want to go through and do some testing of the quizzes and surveys just to see how they display for you and the students. So you need to do there is some cleanup involved.
No one mentioned that, I don't think.
I think the releases and things are a little different too.
Yeah, you have to double
I
check.
have to get used to it. It's best to just forget the other one and learn.
Yeah.
You used it for assignments, right? That was your main.
I did, yeah. I mean, I used it for basically low stakes assessment, and then as a bit of a hub for, because I had these different online bits, so the online math homework and this web page that I had. So yeah, so mine was definitely mostly face to face. So I used it for that. So I didn't migrate questions. I built them. I have built them in Vista. I think it is a little smoother to build questions.
The advantage of having the face-to-face as well is that you can get up there and say to everyone that you should do this or you shouldn't be doing that. And when you're doing it fully online, you have to get their attention. And one thing I would highly recommend is that you make sure that, and this is in terms of the timing too, things that can be answered for the whole group, get them used to posting those rather than sending you internal messages. And be quite rigorous about that. I finally have just now, if it's something that the whole group would like the answer to, I will just say, post this in the discussion. Otherwise, I spend my time answering email.
I want to ask you one question. Since I'm absolutely new to teaching, I just taught one course previously and I never used Vista, so I'm not familiar with it at all. But my students, they were wanting me to use Vista, but at that time I didn't have any time to learn because of the shortage of time. And I know that now it's switching over to Blackboard. So will it be difficult for me? Is it good for me or bad for me? I know nothing about Vista, but I want to learn everything about Blackboard, and I plan to use it for my fall term. So since I don't know it, I have no background. So will it be easy for me to learn, or is it a good thing? I am at an advantage point, or?
If you've never used it before, you're in the best position. Because this is, I mean, when I look at the interface for this product, it is less clunky. There's a lot of drag and drop. It's a lot simpler to learn to use. If you've used another product, you're always doing this content mapping in your head that you have to learn to just let go of in some ways, because like you said, actually I really like what you said, which was getting to the point where you're just doing it and not having to think about how to do it. And that's what you have to get to. And it's pretty, if you've not done that before, then you don't have anything to unlearn.
Yeah. Okay. So since now I have time, so I plan to, in the coming 2-3 months, learn about it. But once I decide to use it for my course, this is face-to-face course, so how do I know that whether my students will also be familiar with the same thing? Do they also need training? They undergo some kind of training? Because I know that I can always come to CTLT and I can work now during these few months to learn about that. So if I use it, and my students should also be, that means it's like I'm using in contact with them. So will they be familiar with it? Or?
There's a student orientation to the new LMS online, and every student, I believe, on campus is going to be put into that.
I think so.
So I don't have to worry about that, right? That
I would say no, but again, I'd like to defer to the panel. Right? You said there was not a huge learning curve for your students, correct?
So for us, our students had extensive experience with Vista, so they were kind of used to the idea of an LMS and what its role would be within their course. These are face-to-face courses. So switching to Connect was quite straightforward for them, and they were able to sort of figure it out. If you're in a faculty in which students aren't using an LMS at all, it may be a bit trickier, but if they've used Vista before or something else, I think this is similar enough that they should be able to.
I don't know if they would have used it before, because this is a 100-level course and all students are.
Well, then they're young and they know how to use computers. So I don't know.
So that should not be cause of worry for me that they know or they don't know. I just do whatever I want to do.
I actually ask the students. I find out ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that an increasing number all the time. Like I started off with only a few of them had experience. Now I'm finding half have. I think it's harder for you than for them. And I would recommend you start with something small, because one of the problems is until the students are populated in the course, you don't find out what kinds of things don't work. And so if you start relatively small and simple, and that you have enough that you can manage it, And then I think you get used to it, get comfortable, and then you can add.
Okay, and then use some features, not all of it, right, in the beginning. Okay, that's a good one. Thank
What are
you.
your intentions for, like, what do you want to use it for?
I don't know, I still have to
Yeah.
figure out, because I know that this was constant demand by my students. Last time, it was mainly, whenever I would email all of them, in one go, and some of them will not get email. I'd say, okay, next week, this is what we are doing, so come prepared with this, and just to send them a reminder, for whatever, there's a quiz in the class or something like that. So students said, why don't you put it up on Vista, right? And that I didn't know anything. So that was the main demand, that instead of sending them emails or doing this exercise, if I put, and also the PowerPoint presentation that I was doing, and then I was emailing them the whole thing, and they were wanting that I should put it on Vista, which I was not at all familiar with. So I think this was the demand, and this much I would like to do at least, for my students in my next class.
And I think that's great. So starting by having the syllabus up there, having the assignments up there, so students don't, if they can't find their paper copy of the syllabus, they can just go here and find it. And also posting your slides up is a great resource for students.
And also putting notices or reminders
Yeah.
and things like that, communication.
Yeah, because I think students are growing accustomed to having that kind of access, so it just makes it easier for them.
You just have to be really careful, because we very often put things up on a PowerPoint that you have to pull out if they have copyright issues. And we're really having to be careful with that. It's something that our department's working on a lot, because we have a lot of images and videos and whatever. So you just have to be astute about copyright, and there's also people that can help you with that.
I think we had Peter in the back just before, sorry.
A number of you have mentioned messages and announcements, and I think messages and announcements, are those really different things? And more general question, is it likely that in fall we will have some integration with the Student Service Center, so it's possible to send announcements regularly to students? I will have 500 students, and if I need to, an announcement or a message on Connect is not the same thing as something that ends up in there, either a text or a Facebook Connect, any way of connecting other than just on a web page. Is there anything? Is there a difference between announcements and messages?
Yes.
That's it, there's a difference.
Messages are private, one-to-one.
Oh.
It is like an internal email.
Okay.
And announcements is something that's broader. There is the challenge that we have is because of the BC privacy laws, we can't just load student emails in, because then you see them. But what you do is you ask the students. I actually gave my students a kind of Camtasia thing that says, here's how you do this. And not everybody ended up doing it, which means they missed some things, but those that do in the announcements, when I set up an announcement, I can have it automatically go out as an email as well. So there is a checkbox for that.
So but they need to register.
As long as the student has put their name in the system, then you can use that feature.
I mean, one of the problems in introductory psychology is we have students registering into the middle of September. And so that those training sessions, even if there's a PowerPoint up on the homepage and so on, that training session needs to be repeated a lot of times. And so registering, if they need, I have to tell them over and over again to register your email. Is that likely to come that that's integrated in the Faculty Service Center by fall? Or the Student Service Center, the announcements actually are automatically connected?
I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out the system here, so I'm sorry about that.
Maybe I think based on Michelle's answer, the answer to that is no. I don't think, certainly not by the fall, that wouldn't be. Would there be integration with the
Student Service
existing
Center?
SSC?
I mean,
to have email?
Well, there's integration in that we pull the names out of there, but to use the emails, you still need to go into, because of this privacy issue, if you really want to use the emails fully, then you need to go in the Faculty Service Center and send it.
The UBC email for students, as I understand it, and this is just what's been coming to our department, is a thing of the past. That we are no longer going to have email by UBC for students. They're going to have to use personal emails. And
I don't know that that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some changes going on there. There's just different ways to deploy it. The students right now would go in and they put an email address in there. So there's many students don't use UBC's email now.
Right.
And so they put their own email address in there. So it's already going to their external email. So.
But my understanding is, because we use it a lot in our department for our early information for students. So it was, we're really concerned about it. And you and I were talking earlier about this whole business of when they select an email choice and the Gmail issue.
Yeah.
I want to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting external email, if you're getting it to your own into your own account, you need to keep your account in your UBC account, because if you're forwarding it out to a Gmail account, that means that your student private information is going to a storage in the state. So you have to constantly be kind of thinking through the privacy issues related to that. I am looking forward to, I know we're looking at testing a messages building block, which will give some kind of alert when you have new messages, because I used to use the internal email for just that, because I get a lot of email already. I mean, that's sort of my job, to get a lot of email, I think. And so I would ultimately prefer not to get a lot of email that I need to respond to, in that sense, more as alerts for myself, so, and then I filter them through. So I'd rather be working within the course environment for the most part, because it's kind of like I'm in the class. I handle that, then I go out. So I like everything inside a closed box.
Are you saying there might be an internal email?
Well, that's what messages is internal email.
Yeah, but I meant from.
But you get an alert on the alerts notifications page.
And announcements could be linked to alerts too that way?
Well, announcements are already, you can put it, that module page that I have at the beginning, and most of you had, when there's a new announcement, it does say there's a new announcement there.
And can you set it up so that you know you have one more day to do this assignment, to complete this assignment? That's one of the things that comes up all the time, you know, the emails I get. I started at 11:50 and it was due at 12.
Well, there are, go ahead, you can answer that.
So that some of these are automatically generated. So there's also the calendar, which will show sort of due dates. So there is a place for them to kind of see, oh, this is coming up. You really need to pay attention to it.
To-do list as well?
I think it's to-do, yeah. So there's a calendar and a to-do list. Probably the to-do list is maybe what you're
And
thinking of. But the announcements, so for example, when I made a new assessment, that would be, it would say, oh, test posted in the announcements. It would just sort of make one for me. So, and that they will see when they log in. So even if if the email maybe isn't super reliable, but you just need some way of kind of guiding them to make sure that they eventually log in, whether that's maybe a static web page or your own personal web page where it's got a link, so it says you have to go here. So something public that people can get at even if they haven't logged in before, especially if you have all these people coming in late. I mean, I had that kind of issue as well. So and of course you'll announce it in class, but you need just various pieces that will eventually get them there. And then when they're used to logging in, then they'll see announcements now.
So was the problem with the announcements just because they weren't necessarily logging in separately to Connect instead of Blackboard? Instead of Vista?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so
they were completely
it's not a
separated.
problem with the announcements, just the students
weren't there.
regularly check it.
They were in Vista still.
It's also that on the splash page for all of their Vista courses, there would be a little green star if there was anything new in any one of those courses.
Oh, right.
So they could log in and look at all their courses and see if there was something new.
I
Now they
noticed
have to
that
go
doesn't
into the
do that.
course.
But it doesn't do that in
No.
Connect.
But there's some responsibility.
There's a main sort of dashboard page.
There's a main dashboard.
But does it give you a notification there's something new in there?
It says, usually it's unread, so.
Oh, right.
So we can take a look at that, but that's what I think is really interesting more is the amount of notification capability in there is very different. There's even something called an early warning piece you can set up so that if you're noticing that there's some issues in there, so that I think is really it's just for me, particularly with online courses, just being able to get some kind of notification.
I don't know if the student view is the same, but when I sign in, the new notice is there. Not a whole lot of other things like discussion postings and stuff, but if you have an announcement, the announcement is the one thing that shows up.
So if they had a list of courses and they hadn't clicked on that, let's say your course, but they had all their courses, they could tell on that.
If you have an announcement, there's the first sentence of that announcement
But
shows up.
that's once they're clicked into the course, right? So if they have
No, that's
all-
when they
let's
go
say
to the
they're-
course menu.
Oh, so on the course menu it shows up.
It does show up, it's just
Okay.
announcements.
Okay, great.
I think we have Mary Lou?
Mary Lou.
Yeah.
Okay, so this gets back, someone asked about student training, but back to TA training. So again, we used to have the build and the teach tabs and all that. I know the old stuff we're supposed to forget about now. But how do you, is there a way for TAs to get trained
Yeah, TAs can come to all that training
They can come
throughout
to
the
all
summer.
those
It's
jobs.
open to the UBC community.
and stuff?
Yeah, so
Right.
there's really, those roles aren't broken out like they were in Vista with the build, the teach, and the student view. It's
Right.
really, if you are a designer or you're instructing it, you're just gonna be on-off.
So
Edit
if,
on-off
if
button.
I'm instructing a course and I want the TAs to have access, they have the same access as me?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
So
They
there's
can,
no,
and there may be some, we
Yeah.
are looking at customizing some of the roles, correct?
Yeah, but
So
it,
that-
but
in
this
other
one
words,
is,
like I would like TAs to help deal with the grade book and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, but I don't want them going in and changing my notes.
so at this point, it is the same kind of role, but again, it'll be a little bit more granularized at some point, we're not quite sure.
Okay, but for now, when I roll over the course or whatever it's called now, I would want to add my TAs
Yeah.
names in.
So you get their campus-wide login and get them added in.
Right.
Yeah.
And knowing the kind of, it'd be really helpful, like, I'll probably get somebody to talk to you about that, of what you're really looking for, because we're trying to identify those roles now, because there's a checklist of 3 gazillion things that people can do, and you can turn things on and off. And what we want to do is have some standard roles, and so if there's a TA grader role, a TA non-builder,
Exactly,
that kind of thing.
You know, managing quizzes and, you know, someone who says, well, I submitted it but didn't show up, and well, I need to retake it because I was sick, and, you know, all those kind of things. That's I want a TA to do all of that, right? In a big class of several hundred students,
Right.
That's,
We'll be back to you.
I think we have Elaine just, and then over there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll make it quick. What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of similarities, and we'll figure out all the details and get used to it, and that's great. And the 2 things I'm seeing, though, as maybe somewhat more in terms of the evolutionary chain of what's to come, I'm wondering if CTLT can create some kind of a live chat tech help, you know, instead of, you know, waiting for next Tuesday and coming to a topic that may not be the one you're having, but one of these, like, you know, sign in for a live chat just to get your questions answered and have some, and then linking that maybe to a suggestion box where, you know, if you guys are seeing a lot of different, a lot of similar questions, that maybe, you know, that's speaking to the instructors are needing a lot of help on this particular theme of questions. And then the other separate thing is, from what you were saying about the dreaded drop ad period, which I feel your pain because I share it.
Ditto.
And all of that other stuff. There's so many other issues that I think are integration among the various UBC systems that are outside of CTLT. Like, you know, it's nice to get the information populated from the Faculty Service Center into our course, but going the other way is I'm sure it's a separate conversation, and I think it's important as we're looking towards the future, not having to log in separately and looking to see who's dropped and looking to see who's added and trying to send an email in parallel and all that stuff. So I'm hoping with LTAC that could be a future direction. But this live chat, suggestion box, tech help, I'm like, that's my wish.
Okay, well, there are a lot of support systems in place for people on campus. A lot of people have an ISS or an instructional support person to assist them, and that's their frontline person, the first person they go to. A lot of people don't, and in that case, there's resources.connect.ubc.ca. So we're kind of building it at that resources site, which has a huge amount of help for people. You can also contact, if you don't have an ISS person helping you, you can, Jeannie, what's the email address for the help desk?
Connect or help@it.ubc.ca.
So you can also go directly to them. But that's an interesting idea about the live chat. Yeah.
We do have, there is another product that we're licensing called, what are they calling it now, Joe? BBIM? Blackboard IM, which is a chat tool that can be downloaded, and some people use that for a service desk. So the interesting thing is it does integrate in with our system, so that a student can see if others download them, they can see other students in their course and do live chat with them. So that is another product that we're looking at rolling out. And if you want to have some questions about that, just ask Joe in the back of the room.
So that's to chat, do live chats with
Yep.
students?
Yep.
That's great.
That's another one.
And that's
So
a-
there's
that's a separate thing.
there's that one. There's also there's 2 or 3 products, but the chat is separate. You know, you have to download it separately. Whereas there's another piece of it that's sort of the full classroom. It's a really lightweight chat, as opposed to the full BB, the collaborate that you have
Yeah.
inside of the environment.
No, I'm just talking about getting us over the learning curve hump of getting familiar with this. And if you're trying to figure out how to make a new group and you can't do it, rather than going to a training session or sending an email and waiting for an asynchronous response to kind of, have that. I mean, Air Canada does it, so.
But they have lots of little videos too that I find are really good. They're short, and I think there's also right in Blackboard. They have another.
So yeah, there's
They get these
contextual
little
help.
videos.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
There's contextual help right in the Connect environment. So let's say you're on the discussions page or assignments or assessments.
Right, there's a
You
help.
click help. Yeah. And it's actually way better than Vista. I never used it in Vista, but I use it in Connect to help.
Just one thing, Emily.
Yeah.
So there were some questions about announcements. So this is the page that you come to when you first log in. You're not in the course or anything, but already there's a section there from my announcements here, your calendar and tasks. And then I just added a module for alerts. So I just threw in that as well. So presumably when you have assignments coming out.
Do the students have to add that module themselves to their homepage?
It looks like the way that this was configured for the pilot, the default was not to have alerts there, but I don't know if that's going to be something that'll be changed for Connect. The Connect splash page already looks better.
And messages, would they show up under the courses if you have unread messages?
I'm not sure about messages.
Once we have the alert, like we don't have the building block yet for that. When I say building block, what much like in Vista where you could add other pieces in. So we used to have Turnitin in there. We've got a variety of other things like web work is in Vista. Blackboard has something similar, but rather than calling what Vista called them power links, and Blackboard calls them building blocks. And so there are a variety of building blocks that we're testing, and that's one of them is the messages building block.
Okay, so that would sit under my calendar or
It
something.
would probably be under alerts, would be my guess.
Okay.
But I'm not sure
it,
yet.
It would be on their main page.
Yeah.
Is that, I think that's the thing I thought that was missing. I didn't realize.
So where's your what's new?
For me, I added a what's new inside of my course.
No, I meant for instructors, what's new, like you're trying out some of these things. So when they come forward, where will we?
Through the Connect website, we'll be putting through things like that in. It's what Blackboard has, or Connect has a really strong capability for what is called extensibility. We can also build these building blocks ourselves, and that's the other thing is that we'll be hiring somebody to facilitate that process at UBC of if I want to create a new connection from a tool I've got outside into Connect, how do I do that? And so we're working on that as well. That's one of the reasons we selected the product was because of the ability to add new things in. For me, one of the coolest things is just inside of the HTML editor that I can say, the Wimber voice authoring piece where I can add in something like that. I'm hoping that we can get that type of thing where we're actually saying add something from UBC Wiki or add something from here. You can do Flickr now, which I've used. So, yes, shocking. But that kind of mashup capability is also one that I think is really interesting. So ShareStream is another one you can use into that. So,
yeah.
I have a question, and it's regarding like a normal, regular courses. At the end of the term of academic year, the students give evaluation of instructor. So I wonder if you have experience, you two, especially Darlene and Michelle, with all the courses online, what kind of criteria you use for the students to evaluate you as an instructor and an administrator of the course?
Student evaluation of teaching is actually, there's a policy for that at UBC. So there's 6 questions that are asked of every course across the campus, regardless of modality.
Oh.
And so, and those questions are actually constructed in a way that are pretty neutral to modality. Then each faculty has the capability to put more questions in. And so it really depends on the faculty you're in. You, as an individual, for my course, what I do in all of my quizzes, I just ask the question, how's it going? Well, not quite that way. I say, is there anything you need help from? Is there anything? But basically, I know, I'm getting feedback throughout the term. So I also try to do that. And you could deploy a survey midway through the term that asks, because it's a survey and the students are anonymous, you'd at least get some feedback there. So, and CTLT has some sessions on that in terms of what we call concurrent evaluations. So
Evaluation online. Yeah.
Most of the faculties, with one exception, I believe, are doing the student evaluation and teaching online, even if it's in a face-to-face course.
Yeah, well, in medicine we do the courses are face-to-face, but everything is online, the evaluations. But somebody administrate, there is a department of assessment unit that they release to the students.
The university sends out
the university does.
So that's you do the same.
I found that the students they email and ask me after the fact, so I think probably I need to make sure I know when that's happening, because there's a deadline, and very often they want to do it and it's too late. It gets close.
What I will do each year for mine, usually I wait till towards the end of the period, because they'll have already gotten to get messages until they take it. But I'll also let them know how the feedback from other years has influenced my course design, which I think also, it's like your feedback is going somewhere.
Yeah.
And I actually probably should do that at the beginning of term, and I probably will next year, which is, by the way, last year's student evaluations of teaching indicated these things. These are the things I did in response. Some of them I have, some of them I haven't. So because of these reasons, so students understand that their feedback means something.
It also helps sometimes because they may ask for something. One wants it this way, one wants it that way. You can't do them both ways or whatever. But also it helps to address there is a reason why you do some of these things, and that it's not changing because. Peter.
I think did you use Clicker? I see Clicker is integrated at least. I see it. I saw it somewhere on and you use it.
Yeah, they integrated it in February or March.
Does Clicker go into? Does it have its separate gradebook still? Or does it go into the Connect gradebook?
Oh, you know what? I never heard that.
You might know.
It can be uploaded into the gradebook.
But it's not automatic. It says if students want to see their Clicker grades, they can go into the gradebook, right? It's up to me to upload.
You still have to upload it through the Clicker tool.
But it's a similar system like it was before?
Yeah.
But there's a new one coming, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay. And it does what?
It will do the same.
Oh, I thought it was
separate.
Close.
It's still outside the gradebook though, so you still need to import that into the
The
gradebook.
grading for clickers happens in the iGrader program, and then that gets uploaded into the Grade Center using the CMS wizard.
The other one is anybody, what's the online office hours? I mean, you used to chat, is that the same, or is it a different one for an online office? Online office hours, I wanna.
So you can use Blackboard Collaborate inside your Connect course, and then you can set the parameters around.
Oh, okay.
You can give it whatever title you want, office hours, virtual office hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I had one student show up once.
That's pretty good.
My TAs have office hours on Saturday night
Yeah.
and Friday night at 11 o'clock, and it's very busy.
Yeah.
That's
That's
good.
I remember when I used one of the audio ones back when I was using Vista, a student didn't realize I could talk. And so they typed something in, and then I said something back, and you could almost hear through it, like you could feel him gasp. And he's like, "Your voice just came out of my computer."
They were watching you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I said, "Yeah." He's like, "That was just creepy." Thanks a lot.
So and then he said, "But you contacted me."
That's creepy too.
I just wanted to mention, I was just talking to my colleague at BCIT, and every SIS section course is getting a Connect session in the fall, but it's up to you if you want to use it or not. So every SIS course, it's called auto provisioning, we'll have a Connect session or course in the fall, but again, you would have to let your other ISS know if you wanted to use it, or IT services if you want to actually use that online environment.
What is
So this-
SIS? What are you saying? SIS?
Student Information System Service?
You said
Yeah.
ISS.
Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah, so
It's basically.
So every SIS course it's called auto provisioning. You will be offered a Connect course online, and it's up to you if you want to use it or not. So if you do want to go ahead and use it, you would contact your ISS, which is instructional support person, and they can flip the switch. I'll simplify it. If you don't have an ISS person, instructional support staff, you would contact UBC IT.
That also depends on the faculty, because
Yes, for sure.
and the Faculty of Arts, all courses are provisioned.
Yeah.
And they're automatically provisioned, but they're also moving. There's particular. It depends on which department you're in. So if you're not moving wholesale, like if your faculty is not moving on to that system in the fall, then although they'll be provisioned, they're probably not going to be moving people over until then. So it really depends.
I think it's still, it's kind of still being worked out, a lot of the details.
But
We
we
didn't
are-
do that for Vista.
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to make it more straightforward for people to actually use the environment. So by creating that shell automatically, and then somebody says, well, how do I get a course? Just ask, click.
Right.
Rather than go through a huge process and the students will have already been entered in, it's just not made available until depending on the faculty, but until the individual is asking for that particular product. So
So
I think there's places also where you can go and play with a course, because if you don't have students already in a course, you need a shell to work with as you're learning. And there has been, I don't know whether there is with Connect now. Do you know?
Practice courses?
Yes.
Yeah, we can certainly arrange to
Because
provide
it makes quite a difference.
Practice
If a
courses.
few of you get together and act like be students or whatever it is, I think it makes a lot of difference. I found that once we went online, it was actually, there were still surprises and,
Mhm.
you know.
So does that mean if your course is in term 2, then you could start working on and playing with it in this auto provision?
So that's term January
Yes.
2013?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're still working with the details in terms of practice courses and what sort of environment that looks like, so you don't quite quote me, but there will be some.
So, but if you do anything on that, it won't translate
No.
into what the real course will look like?
No, the practice course really
Okay,
is just
gotcha.
kind of
It's
kind
just
of
a bit of
student
what-
data and some
Okay.
content to work with, but nothing that
Oh,
resembles
okay.
your own course.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay. So you would still have to do it, whatever, build it up in your own course, or?
Yeah, again, do you have an ISS person? Which faculty?
Yeah, it's, Tracy Kaya, so.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. So it depends on if you're working, you might want to migrate your course, but again, you could start from scratch and get a new empty shell.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. Peter?
At what time of the year do students actually get uploaded to the Connect? If I have a Connect page of the course, at what point will the students be able to access that page and start browsing around, get familiar with that?
So I think
August 15th?
it depends is how Vista works, and I presume, and Jean, you can correct me, when the course is created from the SIS, as soon as that Connect course is created, it's auto-populated if the student has registered for a course.
Okay.
But again, it's up to you if you are going to use that Connect course, you have to let UBCIT know or your ISS person, and then they would flip it on, and then students log in, and then they see their course.
typically it's the first day of class,
Yeah.
and it's always good to know what time. I
usually send people a message in the middle of August or so, hey, you're gonna, once I know it, to the student center, I send a message talking, of course, obviously, I know it changes from then on. But then they want to go to the website, and then they start getting the syllabus. Otherwise, I get emails, and they want the syllabus by email, so.
Well, the other interesting thing with this new system is the content system behind it. It allows for having public files. So you could have your syllabus in there and just make it public and just give them the link for that.
Okay.
So that's what I did recently with somebody who asked us, you can't get stuff in there if you're not part of it. And I clicked, there it is. So you can actually, in the content collection, go in and say, make this public, or just make this for your course, and that sort of thing.
Just a suggestion to make that efficient, and this was mentioned earlier about integrating systems like Connect out to the other systems like the Faculty Service Center or the SSC. There's somebody in each faculty who can access the course information on the FSC, and if you have a public page for a syllabus for a course, you might want to put a link to that public page on the Faculty Service Center or the FSC, the SSC, So when a student goes to look at that course, and many of them look there first before they even come to you, your faculty administrator can upload or put that link up there, and they can see your public page for the course, which is a great place for the students.
And that can be the same one, so you can just put it in Connect and make it public, and then just change that one for that. So.
Is there any last questions? So we're finishing up early ahead of schedule, which is great. I'd like to thank everyone very much for all your contributions, especially from the presenters.